Bardzo dziękuję za cierpliwość. Sławomir Radzymiński, absolwent elektroniki i telekomunikacji na Akademii Górniczo-Hutniczej w Krakowie, wielki zwolennik automatyzacji testów i wplatania ich w procesy continuous integration, continuous delivery. Zainteresowany nowoczesnymi technikami wytwarzania oprogramowania, które dążą do jak najszybszego dostarczenia klientom produktu wysokiej jakości. Obecnie pracuje jako Principal Software Engineer in Test w Ocado Technology. Po godzinach aktywny trener współpracujący z kilkoma firmami szkoleniowymi i uczelniami. Przed Państwem Sławomir Radzymiński.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me well? Cool. Sorry for the technical issues, but it seems that everything is working fine. Sorry. So I have heard rumors that this is going to be sponsored talk, but that's not true. Ocado Technology is not sponsored here. And everything I will say is mostly based on open source software, so I'm not trying to sell anything. So don't worry, this is mostly common sense test strategy, and you shouldn't be really surprised. All right, so let's start. I believe that before we create a test strategy, we should have a clear goal, clear purpose. So what exactly we want to achieve with this test strategy? And I have clear goal, clear purpose, which is the continuous delivery. So we are a company that releases software quite often, more than once a day, in most cases. But I'd like each commit to go directly from main branch to production, which is sometimes not the case. We do have a few manual steps in our releasing process, in our testing process, but we try to eliminate those steps, and this is basically the purpose. Obviously, this goal forces us or encourages us to adopt test automation and to adopt shift left, shift right testing. You will see more details soon. So I'm going to talk about strategy, and strategy is not tactics. Basically, the strategy is higher level. Basically, the strategy is more abstract comparing to tactics. Tactics is choosing a tool. For example, you can choose a tool for UI automation. You can choose Playwright, you can choose Cypress, you can choose Selenium. By the way, those three tools are okay, and it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Yesterday, I had a presentation, I had a workshop about Gatling, and I said clearly that Gatling is as good as K6, as good as Locust. So basically choosing a tool is not that important comparing to strategy. So the strategy is more abstract, and I believe this is much more important. So I will rarely speak about tactics. In few instances, I will say a few words about it. Obviously, when I think it will be beneficial for you to hear about how we test, but I will try to focus on more abstract test strategy. As you probably know, testing is contextual. So let me say a few things about my company, about my department. So this is the Ocado Smart Platform architecture diagram. Obviously very simplified. Imagine that in each triangle there is like dozens, even hundreds of microservices. So we work in microservices architecture, and we split our microservices into 4 triangles. We have e-commerce, we have core, delivery, and picking. I work in core, and I also work in delivery. So we connect with Ocado e-commerce, but we can also connect to third-party e-commerce. The same goes with picking. Picking is collecting your grocery orders. So imagine you order something on Frisco or Tesco online or Carrefour online, and picking is like collecting your goods. So we can pick in our warehouses, we can pick in stores, and we can also in the future externalize this process. So this is a very simplified architecture of what I test. And strategy principles. So there are 7 main pillars of how we test, how we want to test, how I encourage teams to test. I'm, by the way, the author of this test strategy, and it's widely adopted in my department. I'm responsible for making this test strategy efficient, effective. Basically, I'm the test lead in my department. So first of all, we start with zero toil, zero waste. So basically speaking, we want to automate everything. So we as testers in Ocado technology are focused on test automation. We write a lot of code. You probably remember that I mentioned 3 good tools for performance testing, and I didn't mention JMeter. I don't think JMeter is as good as those 3 before, because in JMeter you use interface. You don't write your test in code. So everything, in my opinion, everything should be automated, including data setup. Yesterday on Gatling Webshop, I said clearly to the students that if you create users, if you create data for your tests, do it right. So write a script, put it under code review, commit it to Git, and store it in version control systems. Because this is important. If you do it, if you basically create users via, I don't know, like unmaintainable bash, or maybe even by clicking it, this doesn't provide value. So each test activity should be automated, including, as I said, including data setup, including cleanup. For example, after performance tests, you sometimes need to delete test data. So it also should be automated. It also should be stored in code, in version control systems, etc. So this is the first pillar. Second pillar, shift left. Very popular term quite recently. I believe we also had a second presentation about shift left, or maybe it's tomorrow, I'm not sure. But with shift left, it's all about testing early, and it's all about testing in isolation. So with shift left, we try to focus on activities which don't depend on the other teams, which basically don't have any external dependencies. So it includes requirements analysis, writing unit tests, and writing domain tests. I will tell in next slide how we achieve isolation in microservices architecture. So this is standard Ocado diagram. This is the standard architecture for single team inside our department. So imagine that you work in a team which is depicted in blue rectangle. So you own 3 microservices, red ones. I'm not sure if you see the red color, but they are called Team Web Service. So imagine that your team has responsibility of those 3 web services, but you have external connections. You have each of those web services have dependencies. Those are dependencies for other teams or maybe even third-party API providers. So how to achieve isolation, how to test it end-to-end? This is the standard question for job interviews. And this is how I encourage teams to work with such architecture. So I believe that each team, this is important thing, each team should have a mock of all their dependencies. So as you can see, here you have 4 services which are your dependencies, and you replace all those green web services with mock. This mock is like your team mock, and this is web service built only for testing purposes. So with such mock, you can test your domain, you can test your responsibility end to end without without reliance on others. So this is how we achieve isolation in Ocado technology. The next pillar, which is called shift right. So we try an approach which can be called risk-based approach. So we try to don't over-invest in integration tests, in standard quality model, which focuses on end-to-end tests. And we try to invest in monitoring. We try to invest in smart alerting, monitoring, observability, smart logging. So we try to invest into things which are called testing in production. This is a very broad term, but we want to have smart error detection. We want to have alerts, and we don't only have technical alerts. By technical alerts, you can imagine that. So, for example, simple technical alert is that you receive notification that more than 50% of your requests are returning 500. This is the standard technical alert. But I also encourage teams to invest in business alerts. So imagine that you work in Allegro, and if you know your business well, you know that if a customer adds something to basket, he ends buying it in like 20% of cases. So this I don't know that the numbers are correct, but imagine that you know it from your production data, that if standard customer adds something to basket on Allegro, he ends buying it in like 20% of cases. So an example of business alert would be that we have detected that customers are adding things to basket, but we don't see any actual checkouts. We don't see anything which was bought. So this is an example of business alert. Usually, business alerts are quite challenging, so it's not easy to define them. There is one trick which can make it easier. I'm pretty sure you have all heard about TDD, test-driven development, but the term metric-driven development, the term monitoring-driven development is not that popular. So how does the monitoring-driven development work? So I encourage teams to define the business alert before actual feature work. So imagine that you are tasked to do a coupon system. So you add to your website a coupon system, a promo codes, which will give customers, for example, 10% of discount. So with monitoring-driven development, you can start with defining a business alert that no promo codes was used in last hour, for example. So you start with alert, which is red, which is failing, which is triggered. You work on your feature later, and at some point after you release this feature to production, you release your promo coupons to production, this alert is no longer red. This alert is no longer triggered. This alert is working, and you have, after this feature work, a alert which is related to business. So basically, because defining business alerting is so hard, I encourage teams to think about business alert before the feature implementation. This is I believe, very unique approach that we have. Obviously, with shift left and shift right, there is risk. I already mentioned that this approach is risk-based. So how do we mitigate those risks? Risk is related to the lack of the small number of integration tests maintained by development teams. So first of all, I encourage teams to invest in contract testing. Contract testing is excellent tool for checking your mocks. So if you rely on mocks, you can add a contract test to make sure that those mocks are up to date. So this is the first approach of risk mitigation. And the second approach that we try to invest our time with is our end-to-end test, but we have a team of testers. I'm the test lead in this team. So we have a team of testers that maintain platform level end-to-end test. So basically, development teams can focus only on their domains, can focus on delivering actual features. They can focus on smart alerting. They can focus on business. But because we know there is a risk, we are not 100% that we can live without end-to-end tests. So we have a team of testers led by me, which tries to test everything end-to-end. And we focus on happy paths. We focus on business scenarios. So the risk is mitigated with that. Third thing. So you probably already know that I'm a huge fan of clear responsibilities, I'm a fan of clear definition of who is responsible for what. I can say it. So, in my opinion, the quality of single domain is the team's responsibility. So basically, the team has better knowledge. The team can know better how to test their domain, and they have full autonomy. So I don't force team into adopting my strategy, but I encourage them, and I also give them autonomy to change it. If they think that their domain is unique, maybe their domain is a bit different comparing to standard domain in our company. It's up to the team. So team is responsible for quality, but also the team has full autonomy to decide for example, which tool they can use. They can use Cypress, they can use Playwright. We do have UIs. We try to test UIs in full isolation. So obviously we have three tools we can use, which is the Playwright, Cypress, and Selenium 4 also have network interceptor. So Selenium can be used as well. Fifth pillar. So platform quality is everyone's responsibility. So I wanted to avoid a situation when the team focuses only on their stuff, but doesn't care about the actual business delivery, doesn't care about the whole platform, doesn't care about how the OSP works. So I thought it's a nice idea to clearly remind them that it's their responsibility. And also in test strategy, we have one sentence which says how the managers should make decisions. So we clearly say that managers, product managers, team leaders, engineering managers cannot abdicate responsibility of the impact of their decisions on quality. So I wanted to really emphasize that managers are also responsibility for quality because their decision may influence it. Sixth pillar, deep and common understanding. So I strongly believe that we as testers should build a deep understanding of how things work before testing it. This is a very common sense rule. And we are quite good with the business understanding. We often talk about it. We often talk about Three Amigos rule, where we meet when we meet with product manager, developer, and we decide what are the requirements. So we are decent, or maybe I can say that we are very good with business understanding. So we at least try to make sure that we are building the correct thing. The worst thing which can happen is a situation where we deliver something. When we deliver something, it's nicely tested, it has no bugs, but the customer tells us that this is not what he or she expected. This is probably the worst case scenario. So please make sure that you are building the correct thing. This is the business understanding. And I believe that also we should invest in technical understanding. So we should have a very detailed knowledge how things work. So for example, what are the differences between synchronous and asynchronous communication? How the queues work, how the SNS, how the SQS works, how we release our software, how does it work on cloud provider side. Those are the things that we as testers tend to struggle. At least that was my observation. And I believe we should also build this technical understanding. So how does the JWT token works? How do we achieve session in our application? How does the UI know that the user is logged in? We should have a detailed knowledge about it. And from my observation, we sometimes forget about it. And the last one, intellectual control. So to be fair with you, I didn't know how to name it. So the name probably isn't great. But let me explain what I think, what I mean with this intellectual control. So we have all those automated tests. We have all those layers of safety. We have unit tests, integration tests, tests maintained by my team, production mechanism, rollback mechanism. But we shouldn't we shouldn't forget about actual thinking, how to break it. Are our tests enough? Maybe we should add something. Maybe we should try a different approach. So this is what I call intellectual control. I believe that we as testers should have a slack time during our work days. We should have a time to think how to break software, how to make it better, how to test it properly. So I call it intellectual control. And this is it. Thank you. Questions time.
Bardzo dziękuję. Widzę pytanie na sali, już podchodzę z mikrofonem.
English or Polish?
Doesn't matter, but you can go with English.
I can go with English. Okay. So first question is, how critical is your system for that which you are creating that test strategy or implementing that test strategy?
How critical?
I mean, if it's a payment system, medical safety system, or something like that.
No, it's not medical safety. It's online grocery shopping.
Grocery
So we
shop.
sell a
Okay.
platform for, not sure if you know Frisco.
Yes.
So this is the online grocery business.
Okay, because I always think when I'm thinking about shifting right, it's becoming more dangerous when you are doing a testing of the critical system. Yes, is then because the risk is bigger on that point.
Yeah, I fully agree. This is why I wanted to emphasize the context.
Yeah,
This is why I started with the context, because this is not medical. It's not related to our hearts. This is the online grocery business.
Okay, so one more question, and you said that you're mitigating a risk by doing the production deployments, yes, and then gathering the metrics. So do you using any approach like blue-green deployment or canary releases on your approach?
So we were using it. Right now we are on AWS platform, so we don't have as mature blue-green mechanism as before. So right now we have rolling deployment on AWS cloud. We don't use blue-green, but we try to introduce this mechanism into our platform. It's not yet there, but we know how important it is. And in Ocado.com, which was built on monolithic architecture, we did have this blue-green. We did have canary deployments. Right now we are on cloud. We are in microservices world, and we don't have it, but we don't have it yet.
Excellent question. I see two more coming up.
Hi. I'm wondering if you think this your strategy is specific for the supply chain. For what reason you titled your presentation "The Logistic and Supply Chain"?
So I don't think it's only applicable for logistic and supply chain departments. This is why I wanted to present it, because I believe it may be useful for others, for you, for the listeners. Why I have added it into the title, I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake by adding it, but I didn't think it's only applicable for logistics and supply chain.
You lured me into this meeting because I'm working in supply chain, and I was wondering.
Okay, cool. So I didn't make a mistake.
It was well worth it. Thank you.
At the beginning of the presentation, I think it was pillar 1, you said that you eliminated all the waste and you automated everything. So don't you think that automating everything is actually the waste?
So maybe I said it wrong. There is one sentence in the strategy, because it's a document that lives in our department documentation, and I did mention manual testing, that sometimes not everything can be automated, and in such case, manual testing is recommended. So it's not like I prohibit manual testing, but I encourage teams to automate things which can, should, and are worth to automate.
Thank you. Any more questions? I can see a hand in the air.
And what about the case when the automation is just more expensive than manual testing?
So we are the product company. This is important. So we are building a product which we maintain. We try to sell it to as many customers as possible. This is not the software house. So I believe in the product companies, it's rarely more efficient to rely on manual testing compared to automation. Maybe in a software house context, where we build something, provide it to customers, sometimes it's not that obvious. But in product companies, I believe that majority or even the most things should be automated. But this is only my opinion. Yeah, I may be wrong.
Okay, you said about this business alert. Are they used to monitoring the technical issues?
So we have two types of alerts. One is the technical alerts. For example, error rate is more than 50%. Response time is too low, is too big. But we also have other alerts, business ones. So it's not like we don't have technical alerts, standard technical alerts, but we have technical alerts and business alerts. So they are supporting our production monitoring.
Okay, but these business alerts are used by business or the technical teams?
By technical teams. Yeah, because if we know that customers should make checkout, I believe it's worth to alert that those checkouts didn't happen. So business alerts are for development teams, are for technical people.
Yeah, because I thought about changing the social trends and the impact for this business alerts, you know. Like, for example, I don't know, people change their mind and they're not gonna buy some product, and you get that business alert, and you think that is a technical issue, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, you mean you mentioned you mentioned a scenario which describes how hard it is to define proper business alerts. Yeah, because you describe a scenario when nothing is broken, but our customers changed their mind and basically didn't buy something. So those business alerts are hard, I can assure you. It's hard to define proper thresholds. I mentioned in the example that from data we know that 20% of adding to basket leads to actual checkout. But for alert, you won't set that. You shouldn't set the threshold on 20%, but you should set the threshold lower, on like 10%, so that the small fluctuations in customer behavior don't create false alerts. So this is nice question, because you describe a scenario which is very real for us, and we do struggle with those business alerts. It's quite hard, to be honest.
And could you provide us some more example of these business alerts?
So I was afraid of this question because it's hard to define them. So let me think. maybe, for example, when you book a slot, not sure if you have ever bought something online, bought grocery online, but if you buy groceries online, you book a slot, and you have like 20 minutes to add everything to basket and to check out. So you have your slot reserved for 20 minutes. So, for example, from your data, from your events, you may know that 50% of users who booked a slot ended up buying something. 50%. So you can set a business alerts for like 20%. So if less than 20% of customers who booked a slot end up checking out their groceries are currently on production, you will get alerted. This is the second example. It's hard to define such alerts, and this is why I mentioned this MDD, monitoring driven development, because it might actually be easier to define alerts before actual feature work, because you are in discovery phase and you are forced to think on what exactly do you want to deliver to customers.
We can have one more, the very last. Sławomir Radzymiński. A round of applause.
Thank you.